Here we go. That's it. I'm live. Great. Good morning, everybody who's here, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Why is it doing something about my internet signal? Connection is unstable. Let me just figure out what's going on here. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Okay, yeah, I should have used my intuition. I could make all kinds of jokes about that. But uh, good morning, whoever's watching. Feel free to say hi. I can always see your comments and questions. I can't see who's asking, but that's okay. I'll answer. And when I go back into the group, then I can see everything. Um, and of course, if you're watching on replay and you have any questions, put them in and tag me, and I'll be very happy to get back to you about it. I really want this group to be an interactive study group, really a study group where we talk together. I want to hear your questions. I want to hear your point of view. I am discussing these remedies with my friends, my colleagues, my mentors. I really want to use this opportunity to, even for me, to get as much possible perspective on these flowers as I possibly can, because this is really a moment to pull this system of medicine into the world through the framework of archetypal consciousness. That's really what I'm interested in doing, and I believe that they are an incredible asset to us in our personal growth and evolution. So that's my motivation. Today I'm talking about the remedy called CERATO, which is known as the flower of intuition in Bach flowers. And I wrote a little something on Instagram this morning. I said that intuition is the voice of your future self telling you exactly which moves to make in the here and now, right now, today. And what that means is that any move that you make, which is not from connection to intuition, from a connection to your higher self, any move that you make is not in the direction of your greater good except by accident. And, think about that, right? We want to be intentionally moving toward like the goals of your soul that you came into the world with. And the way to do that is to be in your power, in your pure consciousness, and to be making your decisions and animating from that place, to be acting from a place of power and not from a place of shadow or distorted consciousness. So, just briefly, as I read more and more about Edward Bach, the father of the Bach flower remedies, I was really struck by the fact that there's basically one photo of him. Like when you look around on Google, Pinterest, wherever you can look for pictures, there's really one photo of this guy. I did find like there's another grainy picture of him standing with a pipe under a tree or something, but um, there is very limited information about him. But what I do know is that he changed his sphere of work, his passion, his interest from uh, um, intestinal flora, from bacteria that live in your bowel, to flowers. Like it doesn't seem like you couldn't make a greater switch of what you're going to be focused on all day in your work life, right? And he really wanted to be able to do some kind of healing. He felt that healing was available to us from nature without using toxic products. He didn't want to use toxic things. So I think that's a really important point to make about him, that there is something about this system of medicine which is very pure. And I was speaking with my mentor, Geeta, if she happens to be watching this. I was speaking with her about Bach flowers, and she said that her long-standing impression of this system of medicine was that the Bach version of these flowers differed very much from the other versions that there are. There's a system called FES, Flower Essence Society, maybe. There are Australian flowers that are used in a system, but she felt that this system has a kind of potency that the other ones are lacking, not from the point of view of how the things are made or how, how active the ingredients are, but that this Bach flower remedy system really nails the codes of shadow. And this is something very important to us as we understand the work that we're doing, trying to, the purpose for me of recommending Bach flowers is to help people get out of shadow and into power. And she feels that these remedies, I agree, that they really nail the codes of shadow. And they don't allow a kind of spiritual bypass to happiness without passing through this important portal of shadow and power, that some of the other remedies can create the same feeling of well-being, but they don't produce the same actual spiritual transformation that these ones do. So I think that's really important. It's also important to say that as the flower of intuition, how did he come to CERATO? It's a plant that came to England from Tibet. And he was doing this in the 1920s, right? So like people who traveled to Tibet in the early 1900s were really on a very spiritual kind of mission to go there. And Tibet is one of the most, talk about power places, it is one of the most spiritual places in the world, right? It is the guardian homeland of Buddhism in a very strong way there. So yeah, I think it's really significant that CERATO is a flower that comes from Tibet, and that what Edward Bach intuited about this flower was in fact about access to intuition. So I want to talk quickly again about consciousness, about the archetypes of consciousness, and these four channels that we have of soul, spirit, body, and mind. So if you have a piece of paper in front of you, or you could do this later if you're going back over it or watching on replay, pause for a second, grab a piece of paper or something that you can write with, and make 4 columns: soul, spirit, body, and mind. Okay? The soul channel is about instigation. It's where everything begins. It's about existence. It's your, connection to God, let's say, the universe. Spirit is about individuation. It's now that you're here, you're existing, but it's how you feel yourself to be independent from other people, individual, what sets you apart. This would be, we could call this ego, not in the negative sense, but like your ego, your sense of yourself, okay? Body is the foundation. It's the stuff of you, like it's your actual body, and its resources, and its space, and its boundaries, and its stuff, okay? And mind is about transformation. It's about interpreting what's out there and making things matter. It's about taking thoughts, ideas, feelings, and turning them into something, because otherwise they're just floating around out there, right? Even when we have feelings about something, we're making a thought matter. We're turning it into matter, which is chemicals in our body, and that's what we recognize as a feeling. So The soul, the instigation channel, has the lover as the power archetype, and the shadow archetype is the prostitute. Okay. And prostitute and lover, I'm going to be talking lots about these things. Okay. So I'm just kind of trying to give you a little bit of framework. Prostitute and lover are very much about acceptance, about being part of the tribe, about being valued. Your values, what you value, what you choose to value, how you value yourself, how other people value and accept you. The spirit channel, the power pole, is the sovereign. And the child, which is this distorted version of sovereign, the child sovereign channel is about like capability, about uh, having agency, autonomy, about having permission. Okay, so capability is the word. So the the prostitute is looking for acceptance. The child is looking for capacity to do something. The the body channel, the foundational channel, is the victim and the warrior. The warrior is in the power position. The shadow is the victim. And what the victim needs is willpower. This is the channel of summoning the will to get things done. And the mind channel is the saboteur shadow, and the magician is in power. And the saboteur is looking for evidence, looking for proof, for data. It's collecting reasons and logic, making sense of things. Okay? So what Dr. Bat says about CERATO is it is for those who have not sufficient confidence in themselves to make their own decisions. They constantly seek advice and are often misguided. That is the entirety of what he gave us about CERATO. That is the whole directions for prescribing or suggesting or choosing this flower. For those who have not sufficient confidence in themselves to make their own decisions. They constantly seek advice and are often misguided. So if you look at these four channels now, try to think, where would you put this flower? Like, where does it fit? And I would love to, if you want to jump in now and say what you think, go ahead. But is this sort of talking to you about prostitute energy? Is this about being accepted by others? Is this a child energy about having what it takes to do something? In this case, make a decision? Is it about the victim having the willpower to get something done? Or is it a saboteur thing about needing to see, needing evidence that you're making the right decision, let's say, needing to see something in front of you to help you make the decision? And I don't want to say there's no right and wrong answer, because there sort of is, but definitely this is open to interpretation. And the way that I work with these flowers is that I find two of these channels that apply, and it allows me to give a kind of a flavor. I don't know how else to say it. I've identified 25 of the 38 flowers that have some saboteur in them. I think this is very much a saboteur remedy. It's about the mind channel. It's about not being able to see the answer, not having a connection to what is the answer, and having to ask other people for their opinion about this, because you can't come to a decision based on your own connection with your higher good. But there are 25 flowers that have some saboteur. So how would we be able to know which is the right one? I think that the thing that gives this particular flower its flavor is the child piece of looking outside of yourself to other people for advice. copying what others might do, looking for an expert or for an authority who uh, could help you justify making a decision. Okay, so um, and I put the book away. I have a wonderful book by Mechthild Scheffer called The Encyclopedia. Is that what it's called? The Encyclopedia of Bach Flower Therapy by Mechthild Scheffer. Really, really great book if you're looking for one to get. It's one that I like open every single day. I love it. But she says CERATO relates to the soul's potential for inner certainty, trust in the inner voice, and intuition. That's her kind of frontline definition or explanation of this remedy. Something else that I find super interesting is that I've been listening to an audio course by a guy who is an astrologer who uses Bach flowers in his astrology practice. And he relates this remedy to the Gemini constellation, that Gemini is about intellectual things, about using the mind. And the way that this guy works is to look at where Saturn is in your chart, so Saturn is the one that brings mischief or brings trouble, disharmony, difficulty, not enoughness. I don't know how else to say that. So Saturn brings the insecurity piece into Gemini, so that you have intellectual insecurity. So what he would do is look at somebody's astrological chart and say, if you have Saturn in the Gemini part of your chart, then you are likely to feel intellectually insecure, and that CERATO would be the outlook, the attitude remedy for that channel. Anyway, it's just another really interesting way of putting these things together and trying to understand more, trying to really hear the tone of this remedy. That's what I would love to impart, okay, is to have a sense of the tone of the remedy, so that you really know when it resonates. Like, that's what tones do. They resonate, right? It's a frequency that we're trying to match with a live person who needs it. Okay. So let me go in a little bit to how the saboteur shows up here, and how to be able to see it better. So the problem the saboteur is having is that because the shadows are referred to as feminine, and there's another, don't get upset because there's something coming about genius being feminine too, and genius is residing inside the shadow. That's for another whole topic. But anyway, the saboteur can't seem to access the magician's view of what's beyond the illusion. Okay, so when you're in shadow, or when your unconscious mind is running your thought process, you are very much stuck in the illusion of life, right? Because you're being controlled by, like, what is in your unconscious mind? Your conditioning, right? Everything that you've ever lived that has been packed away somewhere, like, that's what's in your unconscious mind. It's not your present awareness of your situation. It's your ideas. It's how you were raised. It's your belief system that's based on what's going to keep you safe. It's all kinds of deep unconscious stuff, right? So the magician is where you're in your power, in your conscious mind, and the magician can absolutely see beyond the veil of illusion. The magician can see what's behind the curtain. The magician knows the answer to your question, right? That's where, in your heart, or wherever you feel it in your body, you know the answer to your question. That's the magician has that. Or the magician doesn't need to know. The magician can take steps with total faith that the right thing is going to happen, from it, like that there are no mistakes. The magician knows that there is no such thing as a mistake, which is really true, right? Everything that you do is just opening doors in front of you to take the next step. There's no such thing as a mistake, because it's any step that you take is either exposing some new shadow that you can clear away, or it's a step in the right direction towards your goal. There aren't any other options. There are no mistakes. So the saboteur is stuck, not being able to flip into their power. The saboteur is listening, or the saboteur, I guess, is the one who's telling you lies that are keeping you stuck. That's a better way of saying it, okay? So Mechthild Scheffer says about CERATO, okay? They will gather information, evidence, proof, data, and keep hoarding it like money instead of working with it. So this is where you see somebody asking questions, like looking up on Google, looking for information, checking again and again and again, but they don't take steps. They just keep collecting all this information, and it's not animating into action. They can't get over the threshold of saying, okay, here's the choice. Here I go. I'm making this move now. She says CERATO cannot follow their gut feeling. So they have a gut feeling, but they can't act on it. They can't animate it. CERATO people don't see that mistakes are part of how you get to your desired result. That's really what I was just talking about, okay? What we call a mistake is actually a necessary step on the journey to getting what you want. And I recently, this is cool because I was just listening to an audiobook called Make It Stick about how we learn and remember things. And in fact, it turns out that frequent testing in a learning situation like school, like everybody hates testing, and especially, standardized testing is another whole weird thing that we won't get into right now, but like frequent quizzes where at least like pop quizzes had a different feeling. Somehow they weren't so useful, but like having lots and lots of tests were much better than having review sessions where you weren't being tested, because you need to make the mistake in order for something to lock in about what you didn't know. Like you need to make the mistake to become aware of what you didn't know. Like that's really interesting. So when they do tests, or with thousands of people, and then test them later on how much information they retained, and people who were tested lots of times and made lots of mistakes had way, way better retention of the material, weeks or months later on. So it is really a truth that making mistakes is a necessary step in getting what you want. And it's not just in, passing school, but whatever you're trying to accomplish, you need to like practice and get it wrong, or find out where the holes are so that you can plug them. And it's true of everything in life, okay? The other thing about about CERATO that is true of saboteur shadow is that these are dogmatic people with fixed ideas about things. So they're really having a hard time letting go of a belief system that they have that is somehow in conflict with what their intuition is telling them. Okay? So when you get into your magician, potentially by taking CERATO, you're happy to discover, she says, Mechthild Scheffer says, you're happy to discover that all necessary knowledge is at your fingertips at precisely the right moment. And this is very much a magician statement, especially about precisely the right moment, because this is the channel of time. The saboteur magician channel is all about time. And the magician is also able to collapse time, which sounds like a funny thing, but it's so true, because when you get the intuitive hit for the answer to your problem, the problem is solved in a second. Like when you really can see it, and when you're in your magician, then you act on it, because the saboteur is where all the fear is, right? The magician is fearless in their able to see, like they can see it. They know the answer. They know what's on the other side of the screen. And so they act, right? And that collapses time. That's where you make a decision in 1 second, and there's no hesitation. There's no problem. There's no process. The processing is finished. The decision is made because you can see the reality of the answer on the other side. Okay, let's talk about the child. Um, the child shows up in CERATO as the part where you're feeling not capable of making this decision for yourself. Something is blocking you from feeling the 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 capacity to make this choice. The child is always comparing themselves with others. So comparison, mimicking or copying what other people do because that feels safer somehow. Wanting someone else to decide for you is very much a child thing in the context of child sovereign channel. Okay. Looking up to an authority. Um, so, asking your parents, asking your therapist. Um, and of course, like everybody asks people to get data, okay? But feeling that someone else knows better what you should do than what you know, that's the child energy, okay? Whereas the sovereign, when you flip into your sovereign power, your true undistorted frequency of consciousness, the reality, okay? You take responsibility for your own decisions. You know that nobody else can make a decision for you. And that's a good thing because you're responsible for your own decisions. That's your journey, how you make your decisions one thing after another. Okay. Just to differentiate a little bit, because we have at least one other remedy that has a hard time making decisions in Bach flowers, and that is scleranthus. So the difference with scleranthus, the one that I want to point out anyway, is that someone needing scleranthus would be not asking other people for help. They are just in their own mind, they're waffling between doing this or doing that. And typically scleranthus has only two choices in front of them. Like, is it this or is it that? Should I do this or should I do that? Should I quit my job or stay here? Should I stay in this relationship or leave? It's a binary choice generally with scleranthus, and they're not asking other people to weigh in. They just can't. There's no constancy to how they make a decision. They choose one thing and then say, "Oh no, that's not really right," and then they choose something else and then they go back again. There is another flower that is very much about accessing information, intuitive information, let's say, and that's aspen. But aspen is kind of the opposite. Instead of not being able to access what's on the other side, they are like an open floodgate and they can see it all and it's overwhelming and they don't know what to do with it. And mostly what they see is frightening stuff. So aspen is like way too open to psychic or intuitive information. But it's not strictly intuition implies the direction of your greater good, right? And so they're not really seeing intuitive information. It's just a psychic openness to stuff that frightens them. So that's more like they need to have good boundaries to keep out information that's not pertinent or that's not helpful for them. Okay. So what I just like to leave you with here is that it's easy to see yourself in a flower remedy. It's easy to read the description of a flower remedy and say, "Oh yeah, that's me. I need that." Right? That was what happened a few days ago when I was talking about the remedies for stress, that so many people were jumping in and saying, "Oh God, that's me. I need to go and get that." Right? And what I gave you were remedies that really are useful for almost everybody. And so anybody can take them. And the truth is anyone can take CERATO. You can take any of these remedies and you'll never do yourself any harm by that. But what's really hard is not to see yourself in the remedy, but to see a remedy in you. Like to really see a remedy in yourself, what I mean is that you have an accurate vision of what you need in this moment. That's the part that's hard, okay? Because let's just talk about what it could mean. What does it mean to not be able to make a decision for yourself? There is something blocking you in taking a step. So, for instance, if you are not able to take a decision because you have an underlying unconscious aversion to conflict or confrontation, that could be prostitute shadow. That's not part of the CERATO profile necessarily, right? That's avoiding conflict or like remaining in the tribe, right? Not wanting to be sent away or rejected or something. That's a prostitute thing that from the prostitute sovereign, the prostitute lover channel. Okay, maybe it's a kind of a free floating fear of consequences, like what will come next, right? That might be that might be a child thing that could apply to CERATO. Maybe that's part of why they can't make a decision, that they're just afraid of whatever's going to come next. What if it's about being judged? What if this the that you have an aversion to making decisions because you perceive so strongly that other people are going to be judging you on it? That would be a saboteur thing again. So that might indeed belong to CERATO. What about being alone? Like I don't want to make this decision because I could end up by myself. That might be a victim thing, right? The victim says, I'm always alone. I always end up alone. Nobody's helping me. Okay. What if it's about being rejected? I mentioned this before, right? If fear of being rejected could be a prostitute thing. So it's hard to know what's in your own heart or your own soul. And that's why I'm doing this, because I want everybody to do this exercise of learning more about yourself through exploring these flowers. But also, it's good to have a session with somebody who can see your shadows in you, who can help you to expose your shadows to yourself. And that's where you get a remedy or a series of remedies, which is precisely coded for you, right? And like you're going to go out in the world now and start seeing other people so clearly, because it's just normal, right? We can see these things in other people very clearly, and it's hard to see them in ourselves because the voice of shadow sounds so real. It sounds so true. It's your inner dialogue. It's your inner voice that you've been listening to all your life. That's really the voice of shadow, and it's very, very hard to start peeling that away. And you peel it away, and there's another layer of shadow and another layer. It's a long process, but this is the process of personal evolution. Like I said, this is going from Neanderthal to Homo sapiens all by yourself, or whatever it is that comes after Homo sapiens, right? It's like Homo enlightened, I guess. But we're really looking to raise our consciousness beyond what's ever been possible before, because we have this opportunity now to do it. Things have changed. We have new choices that we didn't have before. And I think that these flowers are going to be instrumental in helping us get there faster and more surely. So thanks for watching. If it interests you to have a session for me to, pull through the perfect combination for you, just reach out to me and we'll arrange that. Okay. I'll be back next week with more. Put your comments in. I love to hear what